Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. The first appendix, it says, who is a Hadith disciple? Who is a Hadith disciple? Is a Hadith disciple a gender or exclusive to a color or a race? An age? You're too old to be a Hadith disciple. You're too black to be a Hadith disciple. You're too white to be a Hadith disciple. You're not cool enough or hip enough. You're not knowledgeable enough. You aren't knowledgeable enough to be a Hadith disciple. What makes a person a disciple of Hadith? Do we claim to be disciples of Hadith? Do we claim to be the only disciples of Hadith? Is it an exclusive club or clique? Is there an entrance fee? Is there a membership fee? Is there an application? Does a person have to put in a request for a formal resignation? So on and so forth. What is a Hadith disciple? So it says, where are the people of Hadith? Al-Dhahabi, rahimahullah. And Al-Dhahabi obviously lived in the 8th century. And in more than one passage, he wrote and he spoke on the rarity and the scarce nature of the people of Hadith. And that's in the 8th century of the Hijrah. The 8th century. In which there were many great ulama who came after him. In his time, he asked the question, where are they? I can't see them. I only see them in a book, he said. I only see them in the dirt, in a grave, under the ground. You know, there's no one living, walking, and talking from Ahl al-Hadith anymore. So it goes to show that in the time of Al-Dhahabi, rahimahullah ta'ala, it was something that was fading. It was a dying breed. It was becoming extinct. And there were many people like those who came before Dhahabi, rahimahullah, such as Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, who spoke about people perpetrating the fraud or faking the funk, as we say. People pretending to be disciples of Hadith, but for real, they're not really that devoted. For real, they're not really obsessed with Hadith. For real, they're not really, focusing and paying attention to the core tenets of the belief, the required requirements, the necessary points. What makes a person a Hadith disciple? And many people, they started focusing only on the outward appearance or association, who knows you or who you sit with or how you dress or the color of your skin or your ethnicity. And they start focusing on the thing that actually determines and makes a person a sahib, Hadith, and inshallah ta'ala from Ashab al-Hadith. So if that was the time of Al-Dhahabi, then what do you think about now in the 15th century of the Hijrah? Khairan inshallah ta'ala. So it says here, disciple, a noun which is a follower or student of a teacher, leader, or intellect. So a disciple can be synonymous to student, devotee, adherent. Okay? And obviously there are many groups, different religions and different paths and methods, different schools of thought within Islam that use the word or term disciple. Disciple, obviously, one of the first things you think about it is, living in the United States, disciples of Jesus, the Last Supper, who were the apostles or the disciples of Christ, who carried on his message and spread his knowledge and gave dawah, called the pagans, the Romans, and the other types of people of idolatry during those times, which the way of Christ was strange and weird. It wasn't accepted in Europe, etc. Naam. Also, the concept of a disciple with regards to Hinduism, Buddhism, the yogis of Tibet, the Dalai Lama, person is a disciple of this temple, of this type of Buddhism or Taoism, right? Taoism, etc. An unwavering student that is gracefully allowed entrance into this school or this way, this temple, taught the sutras, given the knowledge, and a person who is a renunciant of the worldly life, so on and so forth. Undying love for his teacher and his way, etc. Disciple. Okay? Disciple of a guru. right? And then we have the usage of the word of the term disciple in the English language with regards to Muslims who are or associate themselves with Sufism. And they call themselves Sufis, Mutasawwifa, Sufiya. And the reason why I say this is because many people claim to be Sufi, but for real, they're not Sufi. And what I mean by this is not saying that their path is right or wrong. That's not the topic of discussion here. What's wrong with that? What's right with that? But just according to that, they're not even keeping it real. You're not even practicing like I said, the core tenets of Sufism. And a person claims to be Sufi, and upon the way of the Sufis, in reality, he isn't. And the core values that the early predecessors of the Sufis said it must be found within the disciple, the murid, who's following the tariqah and the leader of a tariqah, right? Whatever that tariqah may be. Or we have the usage of the word and the title disciple when it comes to the martial arts world. There is a teacher, an expert, a grandmaster, one who has been practicing a certain style of martial arts for many, many years. And he's highly talented, highly skilled. And he has a high acclaim from his teachers and his peers, his contemporaries. And this martial artist has been evaluated and has passed those evaluations and exams, whether it's a belt system with colors or other than a belt system. And he takes on a disciple, someone that he teaches the skills and the arts of mastering oneself, of self-defense, of going on the offense, etc., etc. Principles of life, not just fighting. So there are many different religions, and there are many different strands and madhabs within the different religions that have the concept of a disciple, let alone in which we find in the English language, the actual word disciple is used. Khair inshallah ta'ala, moving forward. From Latin, discipulus, learner. From discere, learn. Reinforced by Old French disciple. The origin of the word, from what is derived. Synonyms: follower, adherent, devotee, pupil, student, learner, upholder, supporter, proponent. Clear. So all of these different synonyms are going to give you a clearer picture of what it is. Someone who is a proponent of Hadith and its sciences, a supporter, an upholder, someone who's devoted to following the Sunnah regardless of the pressure that comes from the people of madhabs or the political politicians or the people of the dunya, etc., etc., etc. Over 1,000 years, the Muslims have been making this dua. They've been at this shrine, at this grave. No one said it was haram until so-and-so came. For over 1,000 years, the Muslims have been implementing and acting upon this hadith. They've been narrating this hadith. And this person comes along and says the hadith is weak and fabricated. No, you can't just teach the people hadith. They have to study a madhab. You won't have a masjid in this country. You won't have any access to teaching in any schools if you don't accept our madhab, etc. The pressure, you say, no, I'm devoted to the teachings of the organic sunnah of the Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's food for thought. So the hadith disciple, or the disciple of hadith, the follower of the prophetic narrations of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The disciple is whomsoever has chosen to devote their life to the path paved by the seal of the messengers, the path that they have been commanded to traverse by the King of Kings in his blessed book. And this excerpt here is not written by the author. May Allah hide his faults. Rather, this excerpt at the time was written by one of the author's disciples. One of the author's disciples. Okay, and obviously this book, many years ago, was written, 2017 to be exact. So it's going on 5 years, or a little more than 5 years now since I wrote this book. And at the time, the one who wrote this was a disciple of mine's. And at the moment, the sister who wrote this is no longer a disciple of mine's for one reason or another. What's important is I wanted to give an opportunity to some of my students to contribute, to pay their dojo dues, and for them to flex their muscles and to showcase their talents and their skills in this work and other works as well. Whether it is the typesetting, the grammatical editing, the layout, the artwork, the cover of the book, and also the different appendixes. Some appendixes were written by those disciples, and some it was contributed by the author himself, by me. Understood? But this here was written by a disciple or a disciplet. So she then says, the path that they have been commanded to traverse by the King of Kings in his blessed book. It is the path of those before him who gained nobility and honor in accordance with their portion of inheritance. The disciple's adherence to the narrations is what distinguishes him from others. He is one that the foundation of the tree is knowledge. He is one who knows that the foundation of the tree is knowledge, while action is its fruits and leaves that conceal its harsh branches. It is contrary to the way of the disciple for him to act while he does not know, nor is he one who knows yet remains idle. Thus he is saved from imbecility and does not become like the donkey who encumbers himself with the load of books stacked upon his back. The true disciple is he whose hunger is not satiated except by this knowledge, and his limbs ache to be used in its implementation. The disciple is the most valiant of the people, as the fortune he must defend cannot be quantified. The disciple is the most generous of the creatures and the most eager to share his bequest. The disciple of Hadith is a teacher whilst never ceasing to be a student. He is well acquainted with that of the old while remaining in touch with the new. The disciple is one who knows what road he must take, just as he knows his destination. She is the lowest in the sight of the people, while simultaneously the most honored. He is as rich as he is poor. The disciple is a mother, a father, a son, a daughter, a widow, a husband. Raised on different planes of the expansive earth of Allah, their path is one that transcends the bounds of borders. While their origins are divergent, they are connected by the ever-preserved rope of Allah. While the robes of old ascetic is not one that is statutory, a pocket watch over one that ties to the wrist is definitely opted for. And while the teist is not necessarily a disciple, the disciple is definitely a teist. And obviously, you can clearly see the beauty of this excerpt and the talent of the one who contributed the excerpt. We ask Allah for all success and consistency in our actions and sincerity. Allahumma ameen. A lot to think about in that excerpt. So many different points coming from different backgrounds, all leading inshallah to one destination. The robe does not define the Grand Master, but the Grand Master is mindful of the robe that he wears. He's rich, filthy rich, but at the same time, poor. A person who feels uneasy when they're sitting still, not working, not giving, not contributing, not guiding people, teaching people, spreading the sunnah, etc. Just many, many, many points of reflection in that beautiful passage. Khairan inshallah ta'ala. Let's move forward to the second appendix, what is the minhajiyya of reading books. And what's meant by minhajiyya is what is the proper, systematic, professional way of reading and studying books. This is also contributed by the disciples as well, or the disciplets. It is said, and we're on page 99, students of knowledge are a small minority in the world. Among this minority, there is even less of those that spend adequate time reading. A major part of the Hadith renaissances is to revive the love of reading and appreciation for books. Why? Why is it important for the student of knowledge to read? How often should a student of knowledge finish a book? Is it recommended or permissible for a student of knowledge to read a book, him or herself, without the supervision of a trained teacher? These questions should be taken to the ocean. Go and ask a fish. Why is it important for you to be in water? Why do you need to have gills? Ask the whale the importance of its blowhole. Obviously, a fish would not be able to respond to you, but if it could, it would look at you, annoyed for asking such an absurd question. The student of knowledge and their books resemble the water to the fish, the air to the bird, the burrow to the ant, the beehive to the worker and queen bee. Without one, the other does not exist. Without the latter, the former is of no purpose. The student of knowledge therefore lives off of books. Their lifetime is black and white, white and black. Allah Azza wa Jal has spoken about this many times in Al-Quran Al-Kareem. Noon wal qalami wa ma yasturun. Allah himself swears by the pen and that which they record. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. Recite in the name of your Lord who created you, created man from a clinging substance. Recite in your Lord is the most generous, who taught by the pen, taught man that which he knew not. And before we finish this beautiful passage, just think about how absurd it is to ask that question. Should I be reading? How often should I be reading? How many books should I read? Do I need a sheikh to read? Do I need a teacher for me to go to the library? Should I sit with a sheikh or should I be in the library, etc.? And as we have explained many times before, trying to clear up and remove some of the misconceptions and rebuke some of those specious arguments that the people say, oh, you need the shuyukh and the ulama, you shouldn't be reading books. And obviously a large part of that statement is true. You do need a teacher. That's a fact, as we have explained in detail in Volume 1 and Volume 2 and The Way of the Disciple. But a big part of being a student of knowledge, a part of your arsenal and your repertoire, should be the time spent in the library, in which there's no teacher, no sheikh. It is you and the books, as we said, or as she said, black and white, white and black, in which you're not trying to memorize or you're not getting an explanation or explaining, but you're just reading. You write down something that you don't understand, you ask about. A question that you have, you ask about. Naam? And there are other times for hifd. And there are other times for review. There are other times in which you sit with the mashaykh, you sit with the ulama, you sit with the teacher, with the professor, you sit with a student that's older than you, that's more advanced than you, etc. You're preparing something, writing something, typing something, writing a book. But time in which is just study time. Read. Open the book, read the book. Whether you're reading in a systematic fashion, or whether it's sporadic reading, or pleasure reading, or joy reading, or whether you're looking for something, researching, etc. What's important is you must be connected to your books in the library. And if not, then it isn't so far you're going to go. Similar to the blowhole and the whale, a means of survival. The fish in the water and its gills. The ant and the burrow. Naam. Khairin inshallah ta'ala, moving forward. It then says, the student of knowledge sleeps on tops of books, eats breakfast on top of books. When they walk, when they drive, when they ride, there is always a book with them. Anytime they leave their house without a book or some type of article for reading, memorizing, or studying, then they consider themselves naked and exposed. The aura is out if they do not have something in their pocket or book bag. This is their opportunity to feed their soul. Just like how the body doesn't have to drink, just like the body doesn't have to think about shivering when it is cold outside, the same applies to reading for the student of knowledge. It is their natural reflex. A student of knowledge should be mindful of what books to buy, what books not to buy, what books should be read and what books should be referenced, what books tell a student about other books, both their benefits and mistakes, what books are classic and what books are modern, what books should be studied with a teacher and what books can be read during their own independent time. Clear as day. There are books that a student of knowledge should write down fawaid from and others that they should read for pure enjoyment. Also, one book that's read 5 times may be better than reading 5 different books. The concept of mastering a field and the style of its authors is crucial before moving on to the next step. A student of knowledge should realize the obligation of building their own library. The public library is one thing. The electronic library is another thing. But there's nothing like the actual book. Its classical feel and scent. It's reflective of the saying, using the master's bow. What makes a book special is that it was once owned and read by someone. A few things come with building a library. A student should know the rulings of borrowing and lending books. Is it permissible? Is it recommended? And if it is, should all books be lent out or just a few books? Also, what about the art of collecting rare books that are out of print and hard to find? We can go on for several pages talking about the minhajiyya of reading books and building a library. My intention is to highlight the position of reading religiously as a student of knowledge. Athletes that torture themselves during practice are rewarded when it comes to the game. They reach an echelon that the average person does not reach. The same applies to your mental training and richness. If you love to read books before practicing Islam, then seeking knowledge should increase that thirst. If you don't like reading books, like most people, then start by picking up something interesting to read, even if it is not necessarily Islamic. Golden advice. What's important, the most important aspect of making a fire is starting the fire, igniting a small spark. And then, inshallah, with the wind, with blowing, with the necessary fuel, the wood, etc., you build up a big fire. And then your next job is to keep that fire, etc., and to protect that fire from burning yourself or burning someone or something of value and importance. So just get into the habit of picking up a book. And if you pick up books as a person, let alone as a student of knowledge, you're already ahead of the game. You're 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead the average person, let alone in Islam, above the average person, above the average student of knowledge that only listens to people in classes. You read the book yourself. Now, moving forward. And of course, the appetite, it has to be nurtured. It has to be cultured. It has to be developed. It has to be maintained. And it has to be advanced. Moving forward. It may light the fire that will run into an uncontrollable blaze. And obviously, I'm saying these things before the next line. And that is because this speech here is coming from someone that studied under me for years. So this student, by Allah's permission, had the ability to adopt and to adapt and to take in things from me and the thinking and the thought process of myself, but with her own style and her own additions. And this is the beauty of disciplism. So you can see that before I read the next line, I'm already explaining it because it's coming from one source, which is my head and my heart, my life experiences, and my school of thought, my philosophy, disciplism, the way of the disciple. Now, moving forward. That blaze being your new addiction to reading until you feel like a fish without water otherwise. Bottom line, if I'm sitting, I'm stuck somewhere, I can't read. Even if it's something un-Islamic, I need to read something. It's an addiction. I'm scratching and itching. Then obviously something's wrong if you don't feel that way. And anyone who loves a thing and is devoted to a thing and obsessed to a thing and addicted to a thing, they're going to feel withdrawal immediately. And they're going to become extremely antsy and uncomfortable without their fix. Many people are addicted to many things. The student of knowledge, the disciple, should be addicted to reading. I can never, ever get enough. Moving forward. And obviously we explained this in volume 1, the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which there are two people who will never, ever get enough. One of them is someone who is seeking knowledge, will never get enough. And one is one who is seeking the dunya, who will never, ever be able to get enough. But the difference between the insatiable greed of the student of knowledge is that every time he reads, he gets good deeds. He gets hasanat, inshallah, sins forgiven. He has the ability to pass on that knowledge, to teach that knowledge, to spread that knowledge to someone else, getting closer to Allah. Man salaka tariqan yaltamisu fihi ilman, salaka Allahu bihi tariqan, aw salaka Allahu lahu bihi tariqan ila al-jannah, aw sahhala Allahu lahu bihi tariqan ila al-jannah. So just think about that now. Versus the one who's chasing the dunya, he gets more and more and more, and in most cases, it takes him further from Allah, the Sublime and the Most High. Moving forward. At the end of it all, what is the purpose of reading a book? It has to be an end game, in mind. It is to act upon the knowledge that you get. Al-amalu bihi. You have to act upon the knowledge. To pass it on and share the information with other people. And it says here to pass it on. It's on page 101. That's a typo. And that should be fixed in the next edition. And it's supposed to say to pass it on and not to pass it on with the removal of the T. Just like seeking knowledge from the Sheikh and listening, I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us love books and to teach us how to better our souls with what is contained in their pages. Allahumma ameen. So therefore it says recommended book list. These are a few books that I gave to my disciples at the time who are studying under me. A few books that are mainstays, classic must-reads, must-haves. The first is Akhlaq al-Ulama lil-Ajurri, an excellent book from the 4th century, which is Musnad. And is a hybrid, whereas it has the athar of the Salaf, the Sahaba, the Imma, and it also has the speech, the explanation, and the commentary of the author Al-Ajurri. And one of the benefits of this book is that Al-Ajurri, rahimahullah ta'ala, he speaks about the imposter, the fake scholar, the copycat, the masquerade, and he also speaks on the development of the scholar. Starting off as a student of knowledge, a tadpole, growing into a big, strong, leaping frog with very long, springy hind legs, jumping from lily pad to lily pad. Or the big fat toad. Starts off as a little small, tiny tadpole in the water. What do you do when you get a lot of knowledge? How do you behave? Do you argue with the fools? Do you try to joust the fuqaha? Do you try to turn the people's faces towards you? Al-alim al-muftatin bi-ilmihi, the scholar who's put through a fitna because of his knowledge, and obviously the status that comes with knowledge, the wealth, the position, the power, the beautiful, exotic women, all of the things that are endowed upon you by the leader, the sultan, the khalifa. You become a qadi, a judge. You go from walking to a mule, to a donkey, to a horse, to being pulled by 8 horses in a carriage. Back in those times, and even today, this is a grand mufti of this country. This is the sheikh of this Islamic university, the top mufti of the country. How much money, what's his salary look like? What type of house does he live in? What power and authority is behind his words and his fatwa? He's connected with the government. He's a type of leader of that country. The kings, the presidents, whatever, they go back to him. He's on the news and the newspapers. He's in the cabinet of the government, etc. The power that comes with knowledge, what is he going to do with that knowledge? Keep silent? Don't speak the truth? Be afraid, be scared to tell the truth, to tell those who need to fear Allah to their face, to speak out against the evil, to make inkar of the munkar, to make right from wrong? Or is he going to water down his fatwa, sugarcoat them, glaze them? Is he trying to appease people and he's trying to avoid offending someone? Or he's afraid of losing his gold and his silver and his big, fancy, expensive house? He's afraid of losing his SUV and his servants and his beautiful wives, right? He's afraid of getting locked up or tortured or put in prison, etc. It's a fitna. Let alone saying things which are clearly wrong just to please people, just to get more money, just to get more status. It's a fitna. And the pride that comes with that political power and influence, as the Salaf used to say, إِنَّ لِلْعِلْمِ تُغْيَانًا أَوْ لَتُغْيَانًا كَتُغْيَانَ الْمَالِ. That knowledge has a pride with it, just like wealth does. So just stop and think about that. And Al-Ajurri, rahimahullah ta'ala, he speaks on all of those affairs in that book. It's why it's such a great book. And Ibn Rajab, rahimahullah ta'ala, who came many centuries after him, he quoted Al-Ajurri and expounded upon that speech in his work on the explanation of the hadith of the harm and the danger of wealth and status upon a person's religion. That 2 hungry wolves sent upon a patch of sheep aren't as dangerous and destructive as a man who works hard to have wealth and status. They're more ruinous to his deen. And that's a lecture in itself. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. We ask Allah for protection. The next book that I've mentioned is Sharafu Ashab al-Hadith, the nobility of the people of Hadith, the eminence of the Hadith adherents. And alhamdulillah, the beauty of this book, the majesty of this book, we have explained about maybe a year ago or less than a year ago when we were in Ottawa, the university there. We spoke on this book. We talked about this book. We shed light upon several sections from the book, why the book is so important, what's meant by Ashab al-Hadith, the status of the author, Khatib al-Baghdadi, etc. And that's a must-read for any Hadith disciple. Inshallah ta'ala, we will stop here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best, and with him is all success.